What is up, party people? I am your host, Lexi Inks, and welcome to Lex Be Real, a sex and dating podcast all about the 3 R's: real, relatable relationships. Okay, my two coworkers, Milo and Remy, are joining us today in the stew. I am so excited to get into today's solo episode. We're going to be talking all about attachment styles, specifically anxious attachment styles, specifically my anxious attachment style, and how I healed it, how I learned more about it, how I recognized that I had it, how it affected my sex and dating life, and what I did about it, because it was a lot. So we'll get into that in just a second. But first, some housekeeping things. Make sure to please subscribe to the podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and or YouTube, wherever you get your media. And on YouTube, we are Lex Be Real Pod. That's the URL. And then rate and subscribe, please. Rate and review the podcast on Apple and Spotify as well. Please, please, please. That helps us out tremendously to get the message out and to grow our community. And then if you want to follow along my sex ed content and all kinds of stuff, my fucking dogs that I post about all the time, you can follow me at Lexi Inks on TikTok and Instagram. And then if you want to read my Substack, I don't post there that often. I wish I did, but whenever I feel inspired, I Substack. That's Southern Jezebel. So it's southernjezebel.substack.com. And then if you want to check out any of my editorial work, my journalism stuff, all that kind of stuff, my social media portfolio, that is lexiinks.com. Okay, so let's just jump right into the topic because it is such a big topic and I have written about it so many times as a journalist, and I've made some videos about it, but I feel like I haven't really touched on it that much on the podcast. And I definitely want to because it affected my life for so many fucking years, especially in my 20s. And I know that so many women deal with anxious attachment, and they either don't know it like I did. I didn't, because I had just never heard of attachment theory until I did, until I became a journalist specifically covering sex and relationships. And then I finally really kind of started putting 2 and 2 together in terms of like my own patterns and behaviors and things like that. So a little bit of background, I guess, on how I figured out that I had an anxious attachment style and what I did about it. So I basically, as also a background of what attachment styles are and what specifically an anxious attachment style is for those who don't know. Attachment theory is a psychological principle theory created by psychologist John Bowlby back in, I think, the 1970s, 1980s, was primarily when the research started coming out about it. There's a bunch of different attachment styles, but basically it suggests that your childhood and like the nurture and care that you were given by your parents or your caregivers or whoever raised you, that really carries over into your adult life, and especially into how you go about human relationships as an adult. And it's especially prevalent in romantic and sexual relationships. And so that is what I have always studied and learned about, researched about, interviewed about as a journalist, is from that angle of like how attachment styles can affect your sex and dating life. And it smacked me in the face when I started learning about it, because I was like, oh shit, like I see my own self and I see my patterns and I see my behaviors and I see the struggles that I've always had in my sex and dating life really just written out on the page, so to speak, in terms of anxious attachment. And so basically I really started learning about it in 2021 when I started writing for Bustle as the sex and relationships writer. But prior to that, I had went through a terrible, traumatic, in so many ways, traumatic breakup in 2019. And I mean, like, I literally ended up in the psych ward. I'm not joking. I ended up in the psych ward because I tried to So that was, yeah, it was extremely traumatic. And I'm not even trying to like make a joke about it. I mean, I kind of am because I can, because it's my story. But it's funny now to look back on and be like, wow, that's so dramatic. But like, it wasn't funny then. So I had an extremely traumatic breakup in 2019. Very unexpected. I was not expecting this breakup whatsoever. And it hit me like a wrecking ball. And I felt like the rug was ripped out from under me. I was living with my partner at the time. We were polyamorous for the most of our relationship. And then we became monogamous and then we broke up. And yeah, like I said, none of that was expected. This was the end of 2019, like later fall 2019, when he came home one day from work on his lunch break and broke up with me and left. And so I was like, oh, I guess this is all done. And I'm like sitting in our shared apartment, like where we had both been living for a long time. Yeah, that was really rough. And so to say that I felt like the lungs were ripped out of my chest and I couldn't breathe in that moment and for probably weeks and months afterwards is not an exaggeration. So I had to, figure out how to move out of his apartment because I did not have the finances to back that up because I just wasn't prepared. I didn't, which now I know better, but at that time I was not expecting the breakup to happen at all, or ever. Really, I was thinking that I was going to be with this person forever. So I had to stay living with him for like 2 more months. I had to figure out my living situation. I had to figure out my job situation. I had to just restart everything. And so I moved into my first apartment ever by myself, living alone for the first time at 26 in February, end of February of 2020, which, if that sounds familiar, ding, 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 COVID. Haha. Yeah. So, like, February, the very like last day of February that year or something, I moved in. I think it was February 28th, 2020. I got the keys and moved into my little apartment on Myra Street in Jacksonville, Florida. And I moved in, and then 2 weeks later, COVID hit. And all of a sudden, I can't go outside. I can't go anywhere. And so I'm like, wow, I'm living alone for the first time ever. I'm having a really hard time adjusting to it. Immediately, I know that this is going to be really rough for me because I've never lived alone before. I've either lived with my family, with roommates, or with a partner. And so I genuinely had never had my own space. I had never had to maintain, decorate, like go about my own space, like cook all my own meal. You know what I mean? Like just do everything by myself and also sleep alone, like getting used to sleeping alone because I had just basically gone from living with my partner and then got this apartment. It was really, really a rough transition for me. And I think it just made me feel so destabilized, which was incredibly triggering for all of the different things that went along with my anxious attachment that I didn't know I had. And so my mental health was really just on a downhill slope from there. And especially after COVID hit, I was teaching still as a kindergarten teacher, but I was teaching remotely, like from my bedroom at a desk. Very weird experience. Just everything was just different and very isolating. And so, yeah, we're in lockdown. I'm single unexpectedly, living alone unexpectedly. But my ex and I were still super, super tight, super close, which is crazy. We really didn't even transition into a friendship. We just kind of like, I mean, we were still hooking up for a while after we broke up, which was terrible and such a stupid mistake on my part, and his part. But yeah, so it was just a very messy, messy, messy transition. Again, I lived with him for 2 months after. So like nothing was a clean break. Nothing was a smooth transition. Nothing made me feel settled in the breakup. Like nothing made it feel final. I didn't get any kind of like closure, even though I don't believe in closure now. I think at that time I probably could have used closure and like distance and time away, maybe to like block him or something, but that did not happen at all. So it was extremely difficult, very traumatic breakup, all in all. And then I went into in 2021, I took FMLA, I took medical leave from my teaching job because my mental health had just gotten to a point where between living alone and my job and the breakup and just going back and forth and like, are we going to get back together or are we just best friends? But if we're best friends, then why are we like sleeping in the same bed, having sleepovers? Like, that's really weird. Like, I don't know. So after all of this time of just like really not taking care of my mental health, I eventually went into a intensive outpatient therapy program, which was 9 hours a week, 3 days a week, 3 hours each time, group therapy sessions, which were amazing. I mean, this program I cannot recommend intend. If you can take medical leave and go into a therapy program, it changed my fucking life. It saved my life. It saved my life, hands down, saved my life. And it changed my life in so many ways. I am so much more mentally healthy and emotionally equipped because I took this program. It was about 10 weeks for me. I was in the program for about 10 weeks. And I also did 1 hour a week of therapy with one of the therapists at the program. And then I also already had my own therapist. And so they wanted me to keep seeing her as well. So I had 11 hours of therapy for 10 weeks straight. All I did was therapy. It was honestly amazing. I wish I could do it again just because I feel like that would feel like a vacation for me. I know for some people that might sound exhausting. I love therapy. So I'm like, please, therapy. So obviously, my first point is therapy is going to be one of the biggest things. If you deal with anxious attachment, if you have an anxious attachment style, if you deal with issues related to that, especially in your sex and dating life, the biggest thing, obviously, I'm going to recommend is therapy in any form that you can get it, in any form that's accessible to you. Please, please go to therapy. But through that program, I learned, number one, that my ex and I were so codependent still. We were still very, very, very enmeshed, very close friends, best friends. And that just was not a healthy place for me to be in. I was definitely still pining after him. I still had like this hope that like if I got my shit together, if I got better, if I got mentally healthy, if I lost weight, if I made more money, if I whatever, you know what I mean? If I made myself better, if I got better in every way that I could think, he would want me again. Like we would get back together. And I think for the longest time, I just was prolonging my healing. I just was putting it off. I just was missing the mark on healing from that breakup. And it was so detrimental to my mental health. And so through this program, I really recognized the patterns of codependency that I had. And I started to learn more about how my childhood and my younger years and my earliest relationships were affecting me now and how I was behaving in these relationships. And again, that like goes along with what attachment theory, the basis of attachment theory. And so through that program, I started really learning more healthy coping mechanisms, picking up tools, understanding more about myself, becoming more self aware, learning how to talk myself through things and process things better. Um, and just how to go about my relationships in a different and healthier way. And so the next relationship, like real relationship that I had, because I dated like kind of a bunch after that, when I felt ready to, after I got off medical leave and after I went back, to work and I started working at Bustle and writing about sex and relationships there and all that stuff. I really decided that I was just like, oh, I think I'm ready to date again. And so got back on the app, started dating casually, went on a bunch of different dates, had a couple flings, short-lived situationship type things. But then my first like actual partnership that I had after that ex of the traumatic breakup lore, the next person that I dated for almost a year, was someone who worked out of town 4 to 5 days a week. And then during the holidays, even more. So this person was like never home. And we maybe got to see each other once a week. That was like really twice a week if I got lucky. You know what I mean? And so if you would have talked to the version of me who was dating that guy in 2019, I would have never been okay with that. I would have never been able to handle that. I would have never, ever, ever been okay. But once I went through the therapy program, once I started learning about attachment theory through that and through writing as a sex and relationships writer at Bustle, because I wrote so many things about it and interviewed so many therapists and researchers and experts who knew about attachment theory. once I dove into that world and like it opened my eyes to like, wow, this is so relevant to me and my own sex and dating life and experiences. Then I really was like, oh shit, I am anxiously attached and I need to like figure out how to work on that. So of course I kept going through therapy, individual therapy, even after the program ended, through 2021, through 2022. And then at the end of 2022, right before New Year's, I matched with this guy that I ended up dating, was my partner in 2023. And we hit it off right away. We were super compatible in like every way you could think of. We were so compatible. We have the same exact values, same belief systems, like very same sense of humor. He is 11 years older than me, which is my sweet spot, unfortunately. Very cool, just very funny, very hip, like chronically online like me. Like, I don't know. He's a good person. I do think he's a good person, even though, we don't speak now. I do wish him the best. But I say all that to say, I only saw him once a week, basically. And so it was a huge shift from the codependency that I experienced in my previous relationship, where, I mean, even my partner would contribute to it too, because we both would be like at work in 2019 texting each other like, I missed you so much. I can't wait to see you when I get home. Like that was our relationship 24/7. And even though we were polyamorous, my relationship in 2019, the polyamory was a huge part of the instability that I felt in that relationship. And it definitely was a huge part of triggering my codependency issues, my anxious attachment, and like just feeling unstable all the time. Um, but this new relationship, we were not polyamorous. We became exclusive a couple weeks in, like, the normal trajectory. And I only got to see him once a week, which again, 2019 me would have flipped shit if I was like, oh, I can't see you every single day. I can't live inside of your skin. What do you mean? But instead, I was like, okay, like, I have my other friends. I have all of my freelance work that I was doing because I was a freelancer at the time and still am, but that's when I started my freelance career. And so I was like, okay, I have a lot of work to do at all times. I have hobbies, I have all my friends, all my family. I have a dog. Because at that point I had gotten Remy during COVID summer in 2020. And I was like, I'm good. Like, I don't need to see you every day. And in fact, I like that I don't have to see you every day. Like, I like that I don't have that pressure. And I have way less of a chance of developing that codependency again because we just logistically have a very different situation here. And so even though I did miss him when he was, out of town for work and things like that. But it was just a much healthier connection all around, much healthier attachment. And especially having gone through all of that therapy and just having so much time to myself, to really focus on me and my own goals and my own career and all of my passions and interests and all my other relationships. Like, it was so healthy for me. It was so good for me to not even have the possibility of constantly spending all my fucking time with a partner. And even though that relationship also ended, it ended in such like a healthy way that I literally think I cried for a few hours the day we finally officially broke up. And I broke up with him at the very end of it. And then I just cried for a couple hours. And then I was like, okay, I mean, I'm sad, but we can move on. Like, I dealt with it way differently than I dealt with the breakup in 2019. Let me tell you, I did not end up in the psych ward this time. And that was a win for me. So basically, through all that therapy, obviously, that's like my number one tip. If you're dealing with anxious attachment, that is the biggest thing that made the biggest difference for me. But in terms of like inner work that I think is applicable to more people and I think you can do without necessarily going to therapy. Number one, I had to learn how to get comfortable being uncomfortable. That is something I have always been so bad at. And I think a lot of people deal with that too, is like sitting in that discomfort, experiencing it and just letting it be, letting it happen and understanding that it's not going to kill you is so, so, so important. So number one, that being uncomfortable and just being okay with that. Like sitting in that pain or discomfort or awkward feelings, whatever, because even at the times when like my gut, like my, anxious attachment and codependency past would be like, oh, he's probably like talking to someone else. Oh, he could be cheating. Like, oh, if he's on the road, like he's gonna forget about you kind of thing. Then I would be like, no, like that's okay to think that. And I understand where that's coming from. I'm sitting in those feelings. I'm understanding that they're coming from my irrational, anxious attachment brain. And I'm going to calm them down myself. I'm going to learn my healthy coping mechanisms. I'm going to self-talk. I'm going to do all those things, that I learned in therapy. And I'm going to be okay being uncomfortable sometimes. And I'm going to be okay being upset sometimes. Like it is okay to sit in those feelings and process them. Even after a breakup, like even when I was upset, I let myself cry. I let myself be sad. I let myself be like, wow, I'm really bummed. Like this guy and I got along really well. We had a great connection. He met all of my family and friends. They really liked him. They thought we got along. They were like, you guys have the same sense of humor. You seem really happy, like all this stuff. He seems really cool. And he was cool and he is cool. And that's the thing is like, I was able to let myself really sit in that discomfort for the couple hours that I did. And then I was like, I'm good. I'm good. I'm going to be okay. And I think allowing myself that time and that space to be upset and really, really marinating in it for just the time that I needed to allowed me to move on so much more efficiently and healthily and quickly than I would have if I would have just like shoved it down and tried to avoid it or tried to like bargain my way back into the relationship or, like be in denial about it or whatever that I would have done in previous years. And so that is a huge thing is number one, be okay being uncomfortable because especially if you deal with anxious attachment, like there are going to be times where those feelings are going to come up. You cannot push them away. You have to process them, confront them head on, recognize where they're coming from, and be like, okay, how can I work through this? How can I self-soothe? That's the biggest thing for me is like I've learned so much how to self-soothe and work myself through things that I don't even have to process things out loud with other people half the time. Like, which is a huge progress for me from, previous versions of myself. And the second thing I learned through a different connection that I had prior to this guy who was out of town all the time. I think it was the summer of 2021, like in between after the therapy program, but before I met my most recent ex in that year. Summer of 2021, I was kind of in like a no man's like in between my job at Bustle and my teaching job. I had just resigned from my teaching job. So I was kind of like transitioning into my new career, my journalism career. And I was dating just casually and met this guy on Tinder. He was like 14 years older than me, I think. I think I was 27 at the time and he was like 40 something. Yeah, he was like 44. So he was quite older than me. And he was very cool, very handsome, very witty, and we had a great connection. We went on a great first date. I was like smitten immediately. So was he. Like it was just a very intense, strong connection right away. And we only dated for a few weeks because he was actually living in a different country. He was from Jacksonville, but he was living in a different country at the time. And he was returning to that country in a few weeks' time. And so we really only got to see each other for a little bit, but it was such a powerful, intense, just like incredibly fulfilling connection for the time that we had it. And of course, I was like so bummed. Like, I think in my wishful thinking, young, naive mind, I was like, maybe he'll like want to move back, because he teetered on, he was like talking about considering coming back to Jax, especially because like he was getting older in his 40s. Like, he's like, maybe I want to slow down and move back home or whatever, just come back to my hometown. And so I was like, oh, maybe I'll make him want to come back, like just so completely delusional. But ultimately, even though that connection ended and I was still so sad because I was so like in limerence with this man, I was like obsessed with him. I think a couple days after the whole like breakup, whatever, like the whole like we stopped talking happened. I remember telling one of my friends, you know what? I got to connect so deeply and intensely with this human being that I never would have met otherwise. I never would have encountered him otherwise. And we had 3 weeks of just sparks, just this beautiful, intense, incredible connection. And on our first date, I remember telling everybody within the first 5 minutes, I was like staring into his soul and he was staring into mine, like over the table. And I just go, oh shit, in my head. I'm like, oh, I'm smitten. Wow, this guy is great. And it didn't occur to me till after, but I realized, you know who didn't exist in my head in that moment? My ex that I thought I would never get over, the one from 2019. I was like, he didn't exist to me in that moment because all that existed was this guy. And so I think number one, that made me realize there's other people out there for me. So especially if you're anxiously attached and you're going through a breakup or you're dealing with a situationship that like you know is going to end, or if you have a crush that's like unrequited, trust me, there are other people out there. And once you meet a new person, sometimes you just have to move on in order to move on. You know what I mean? And secondly, I think I also recognized how amazing is it? What a gift is it that we get to, it's so dark in here, we get to connect with people, even if it's for such a fleeting moment, even if it's for 2 days, even if it's for 2 weeks, even if it's for 2 years. How gorgeously human and gorgeously, just what a beautiful, imperfect human experience. What a blessing it is that we get to have these insane connections with people, even if they don't last. And we can just look back on that and be like, wow, that was powerful. That was human. That was amazing. And honestly, especially now that I've had more time to like get over it, move on, and it's been years and years and years, I'm much older now, but it's like, wow, that was so fun. I don't know. It's so fun and cool to just meet this person that I had this like cosmic connection with. And then it just ends and we move on. But it's like, I got to experience that joy and that like limerence and that ooh la la feeling for as long as I did. And I've had that with plenty of people. I've had that with so many people. And it's like, even like situationships that just like end, you still got to like have this crazy human connection with someone. And I don't know, I think it really put my perspective on those kinds of connections, those like connections that are short-lived. It really made me appreciate them. And I think it really put into perspective like this sense of detachment. And so I think that's what my two biggest points are now that it's getting so freaking dark in here. My sense of detachment grew and my ability to detach grew. I realized how important detachment is, especially in attachment styles. You have to learn with anxious attachment, instead of like death gripping on for life to a relationship that's not working, somebody that's not returning your affection and your admiration and your respect. Like, you have to loosen that death grip, detach, and recognize that truly what is meant for you will find you. What is meant for you will stay. And the people that are meant to be in your life will find their way there, and they will find a way to stay there. They will find their way there, and they will find a way to stay there. And that's that on that. So church is over. Okay. But no, seriously, that I just really wanted to kind of have a yap sesh about anxious attachment, because again, trust me when I say I have been through the fucking ringer with my anxious attachment, and I know how it feels, and I know how it feels to heal it. And so if you guys have any questions that I didn't answer in this yappy, long-winded episode, let me know. You can feel free to email me, send me a DM, whatever, on TikTok or Instagram. And please, again, subscribe to the pod on YouTube at Lex Be Real Pod, or on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, wherever you listen to your podcast. Review and rate the podcast, please, so we can find more people to join the community. And follow me on TikTok and Instagram at Lexi Inks. And I love you guys. I'm so happy you are here. I'm so happy you stuck through this with me. And I will see you later. Bye.